2024, no rookies. 2025, lots of rookies. Throw in some prepositions and adverbs and conjunctions, and there's your podcast intro. I'm Peter Brook. I'm joined by Blue Guy and Ace Shield, and you're listening to the DRS Train podcast.
This is the DRS Train.
So as it is, we're in our 4-week summer break. Some people might need the break. I personally wouldn't have minded carrying on with some races. But we thought for the time being, since we have quite a large rookie class, especially if you take the more liberal definition of rookie that would include people like Liam Lawson, for 2025, that we should maybe have a bit of an assessment of how they've been going. Bit of a mix, because obviously different abilities, different reputations, different teams. But if we go by championship order at the moment, then I think we should start with Mr. Antonelli. So he's had there's a lot of hype behind him. He's shown a lot of promise in the feeder formulas, and for the most part himself, he's driven quite well. He's made some rookie errors. He's also had a lot of bad luck. There's been a mid-season run of no points finishes, which was quite disappointing. But he got a podium. And otherwise, I think there's a lot more to come from him. Ace, what do you think?
Yeah, before the start of the season, I had said that before judging Antonelli's ultimate potential, we should have waited until 2027, because for 2025, the ground effect cars caught out many drivers, and he's still catching out many drivers in the teams with the development and the way to drive the car and the limit, the behavior. And then 2026 was going to be an entirely new machine and an entirely new car. And so again, basically, whatever you learn for 2025, half of it is already thrown in the trash, because the car is now wildly different. And so he said about Antonelli to wait until 2027. And as it turned out, it wasn't such a bad call, because as it happened, an upgrade on the Mercedes car after Imola caught Antonelli out, and he started to struggle driving the car. Same for Russell, but Russell being more experienced, he coped better with the issue. And Antonelli being a rookie, he had that run, as you said, in the middle of the season, with a lot of misfortune. But he himself was not as close to Russell as he was at the start of the year. The gap only got bigger. So the reason was this upgrade. Then outside of that, considering this, it wasn't all bad. At the start of the year, he was reasonably behind Russell, and he was slightly improving. I think that throughout the year, he has this issue in qualifying, that he's really not where he should be. But in the races, I saw a lot of good performances, a lot of good thinking in a car. He made overtakes on Verstappen in Bahrain, and I think one other time along the year. I don't remember where though. So that's a good sign. And but the other rookies, as we will see, are also doing very well. So in comparison, Antonelli is being almost a disappointment.
Would you say that he's a disappointment? That's up to debate, but that's something you also mentioned in the Christmas special back in December, that how rookies would have to adapt for 2026. I think Antonelli is doing okay. I don't think he needs to beat George Russell necessarily, otherwise he would be destroyed mentally. But I think qualifying has definitely been an issue. I think I agree with you with that. I haven't paid too much attention in his qualifying position. But I think Antonelli has done well until around June, July, because around that period, either he made some mistakes or just experienced what Raikkonen experienced in 2005, except that the engine didn't blow up regularly. But I think Antonelli is doing okay. I think he needs to continue where he's at, try to understand the car, try to ensure that try to ensure that he puts in a good result, and ensure that he builds on himself. Because, as I said back in December, beating George Russell is not a priority. You should try and learn the car first, and I think he's doing that. The gap is increasing, but if it continues to increase, then that's a worrying sign. But if he can try and continue his good performance from this year and try and bring that for 2026, then I would say that he's going to do very well in the future.
I mean, To be honest, aside from crashing into Max in Austria, he hasn't made any particularly significant driver errors on his part. A lot of the problems has been of a mechanical nature because he's had this 5-race stretch of having 3 mechanical retirements, which is half of the total number that Lewis had when he was at Mercedes. But there's things. I mean, that race was farcical, and obviously they just didn't do the strategy right. Belgium didn't qualify well, and that has been an issue as there's been, because we saw the very first race, for example, he got that in Q1, but then got himself up to 4th place. That qualifying has gone bad in a few moments, but otherwise, compared to the other rookies in particular, other than Austria, not any particularly significant errors, I would say.
You're forgetting he crashed at Monte Carlo. And by crashing, he basically also knocked Russell out of Q3.
Did he crash?
I don't remember
yes,
exactly.
he did. Yes, it was.
No, Russell got the engine issue at Monaco, but Antonelli crashed out on his lonesome self at the chicane out of the tunnel.
Yeah, yes, that was it. Yeah, but otherwise, yeah. So that kind of screwed that. I mean, that race was just the way it was set up. There's no possible way you could recover from that. But beyond that, for a rookie, not too many errors going on. It's just been that bad luck. Because after the first 4 or 5 races, he had one of the highest points averages in Formula One, which is now like halved because of everything that's gone wrong. But he's getting into a rhythm, and there were always going to be teething issues because he advanced so quickly. I mean, to skip Formula 3, Formula 2, there was, flashes of brilliance, and then a lot of stuff where it's like, maybe this was a bit premature. So that's just always going to be, and because compared to the other drivers, he's in what until recently was a front-running team, very large budget, quite big team. So it's quite a big shoe, and also to be replacing Lewis, you're going to get compared to that. So quite big shoes to fill.
I have a question for both of you. Do you think Kimi Antonelli's podium at Canada flattered him?
I mean,
I don't
he got that
think
one
it,
just by fasting Max, didn't he? Passing Max at the start, wasn't it?
He passed Piastri, not Max.
Piastri, right.
Yeah, I think, honestly, what I saw from Antonelli in the first part of the year, so before the upgrade, and Canada is kind of a weird track, so I count it also as first part of the year, although it came after the upgrade. But, what I saw in those races, so basically from Australia until Miami, plus Montreal, what I saw was that he struggled in qualifying. He wasn't up to Russell's pace on one lap. But then in the race, he was executing the strategies fairly well. No problem with degrading tires or other stuff. He was pulling off overtakes and racecraft when he was required to. And then pure pace. He wasn't far behind Russell. Sometimes he was even faster. In Canada, Russell won the race. Antonelli was third, a few seconds behind. When the safety car came out at the end, he was still a few seconds behind Russell. Russell didn't pull away. That meant they had basically the same pace. And, the same happened basically in all those other races. In Japan, Antonelli even did the better strategy and was faster than Russell. He finished not even a second behind because he started further behind. So, lots of good positives. But then in the second part of the year, that was no longer true. He wasn't anymore on Russell's pace, even in the race. He started to struggling actually making the racecraft work out. You remember, what was it, Belgium? He had to make the overtake on Ocon, and then kind of screwed it up, didn't make it. Never got close enough to pull off the overtake again. He has a Mercedes, Ocon had an Haas. He had new tires, Ocon had old tires. It's Belgium with DRS. He couldn't pull off the overtake. That was disappointing in my opinion.
Could we also say that's down to experience? Because if you couldn't get the overtake on time, then that's down to inexperience.
That's gonna be a common thread also for all the other rookies. Probably this is better handled in a wider season review, half-season review. But long story short, yes, inexperience is a factor for many of the rookies' performances. It is the main factor, in my opinion, as to why their more experienced teammates have way more points. So why Russell has way more points, why Hülkenberg has way more points, why Gasly has way more points, who's the other rookie now? Why Ocon has way more points than Bearman. That's a common thread in experience. On top of that, I would say also the age. Antonelli is the youngest of the rookies, so he'll take more time to get the same experience as the others. Even if he did one whole year of testing in previous cars, he's still 18 years old, while Bortoleto, what is he, 20 years old? He drove cars 2 years more. So
Right, and I guess you could say that. Another thing, if anyone forgot, is that he spun in Australia during the rain. I think it was down to luck that the safety car came in. Had it not been like that, he probably would have finished a bit lower. So I'm not sure if anyone is mentioning about the spin. Just wanted to point that out.
Bear in mind that would have been probably the first time he was driving in the rain in a Formula One car, because they wouldn't have done winter testing in the rain. I mean, we saw Hadjar, he spun off before the race even began. So that was just, again, it's just a lack of experience, which comes, I guess, a wider comment is just the lack of testing, which blah, 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 we go on about compared to 20 years ago, that's always going to be an issue because simulators can't simulate reality. So
had it been like 2007, let's just say, he probably would have been more or less prepared. But I think he's doing a good job. That's up to debate, but I think he's doing what he needs to be doing. He just need to ensure that he's a bit lucky with the reliability, and he should be okay. And I think, as I said, I'm looking forward to see more him in the coming years, provided that he does a great job but later this year and in 2026.
Yeah, as it is, he's doing everything right and being very well behaved and everything. So I mean, there is a question. I mean, you wonder. Well, it would need a lot of things to fall into place, but do we think a win might be on the cards this year?
Where else
No.
would what about Las Vegas? That favored the Mercedes quite a lot because Mercedes really like cooler conditions. So
They do. So yeah, as an example, that's one where you would expect them to be stronger, but then at the same time, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be any better than McLaren. But also, if the car is strong, he then has to find his way around George, which he hasn't really done at all this year. So, but it could happen. I mean, he's better placed than any of the other rookies to take a surprise win this year. But a lot of things would need to fall into place for that to happen, which are probably not going to fall into place. But yeah, for the time being, everything's going well for him.
yeah, a win for Antonelli this year would be more luck than actually deserved. And I honestly, right now, I don't think there are many tracks that can be favorable to Mercedes right now. I'm thinking Zandvoort, Brazil, Las Vegas. Maybe these three can work out for Mercedes. All the others, it's not possible. Even then, in these three tracks, I think it's gonna be Ferrari the best shot at winning, not Mercedes. There is still Max.
Yeah, he's missed the window to become the youngest race winner, hasn't he? I think because he turns.
Yeah, he missed it in the first 3 races of the year.
Yeah, he turns 19 in a couple of weeks, doesn't he? So yeah, that's not going to happen. But hey ho. I keep thinking he was 17 maybe because he looks 17, that I thought that's how old he was when he started, but obviously not. But yeah, overall for him going pretty well. The next one up in the standings is Isaac Hadjar. He's been kind of the breakout star of this because I wasn't expecting much, and we were seeing that in F3 and F2, there was some bad luck, but also he would just moan endlessly. Also had a lot of self-inflicted bad luck at the same time. His PR training has clearly worked because he doesn't complain nearly as much on the radio, but then he often doesn't have much to complain about because he's been driving very well. I mean, we've seen races recently where he's been faster than the Red Bulls. Lawson is only just getting into a rhythm, and so he's been beating him for a long time. So, yeah, I'm quite surprised by him, and I think he's going to go places, but for his own sake, probably not Red Bull.
Yeah, about Red Bull, I think there has been talks about Yuki being dropped for 2026, so it's going to happen one way or another. But yeah, I think Hadjar has done a great job. I think he's done a lot better than I initially thought, and I think he's doing the best he can in the race pool in that Minardi. And I think nobody expected Lawson to be that bad in starting the year. But we'll talk about more of Lawson later. Lawson, Hadjar, I think he's just doing the job. He's not, like you said, he's not complaining much. I think he's putting in the results. I'm not sure about his qualifying performances though, because I haven't looked really into it. But I think he's helping bring home some valuable points for Minardi, and I think if he can find a place other than Red Bull, that would be fine. But I think he'll have to go to Red Bull at some point because 2026 is going to be a reset for everyone. And honestly, like if the Red Bull is going to perform as bad as 2025, 2024, 2023, then there's going to be a big issue. So let's see what happens because he's actually my rookie of the year so far.
If we consider Australia this year still part of the last season of Formula 2, then this season from Hadjar would be completely different from his last year in Formula 2. Then as it happened, we literally got one race where he whined and made stupid mistakes, crashing on the formation lap in Australia. And then after that, it was completely different from what we saw from Hadjar last year.
I think that crash in Australia early this year pretty much taught him a lesson, and I think, in my opinion, it helped him grow as a person and become much stronger. And think it did teach him a lesson. Don't get too overconfident of yourself. But overall, I think Hadjar has improved immensely since the season opened.
Yeah, I think the complaining thing, partly, well, things are going, even though he's not, fighting for the title like he was in Formula 2, it's still going reasonably well. The PR training will have been a thing because they really lay on that much heavier than they do in F2 and F3 because that's when you actually start getting like mainstream fame and attention because nobody outside of hardcore motorsport fans knows anyone in Formula 2 or Formula 3, whereas there are loads of people in Formula 1 that are just have mainstream attention and household names and whatnot. So that's always an important thing. I was saying he's run well. To be fair, other than the sprint race at Spa, he hasn't scored any points since Spain, which was like 5 races ago. But even so, the qualifying has been very good. There's been a lot of Q3 appearances. It's one of these things of now you just feel this. It's almost like a sense of dread when you see one of the B team drivers doing well because you're like, well, now they have to go to Red Bull, and that's just going to ruin them and their career, and they can't. And yeah, they have to just leave the academy. Until Red Bull fixes their design philosophy on their cars. Whether or not they will do that since Max is staying next year, it's almost worth not having that driver academy because you can't. It's not going to work for anybody. It's just going to destroy their careers, putting them in the main car. I don't think it's going to happen because we've seen with Tsunoda, everyone got excited because of his driving style is very similar to Max's, and yet he's doing no better than any of the previous teammates. So I don't really want Hadjar to try and go there, but we'll see.
I said before about Antonelli that there is a very big difference between these rookie drivers and their more experienced teammates down to experience. It makes a big difference in the standings. And of course, Ciaron and Lawson are the exceptions because they don't have an experienced teammate. They're both more or less rookies. And that makes it hard to judge either of their season. Hadjar started the year quite close to Tsunoda, aside from the crash in Australia, but in the race after was mildly impressive in China. Then he got Lawson and was beating Lawson. And so as long as he was beating Lawson, we were all saying, wow, this is much better than what we expected. Then Lawson kind of got back in the groove. He started to equalize with Hadjar, and now we were no longer that impressed by what Hadjar is doing. You say he hasn't scored any points in Spain. I remember some misfortune mixed into that. He had some problems on the car in Australia. Otherwise, he would have finished absolutely in the points. He would have beaten Hülkenberg for sure, in my opinion. Then there were other occasions he got stuck, like in Hungary. He wasn't on the same strategy as Lawson, and Hadjar got stuck behind Antonelli, unable to overtake. Antonelli finished in 10th place. Hadjar was outside the points. Lawson was on the
he got
correct
hit on the
strategy.
hand, didn't he, as well, by the gravel? He got that as well.
Precisely.
And then who was it that put him in the wall in Silverstone?
Himself, he crashed into Antonelli because there was no spray, no visibility.
Yeah. So yeah, a few things like that. But again, that's just rookie. It's the lack of wet weather running because even if we had, without the testing, they don't even, as we know, they don't let the drivers drive wet, so no one knows what to do anymore with that. But yeah, for the most part, it's been some self-inflicted, but mostly just bad luck with him. So then after him, we have his current teammate, since he's had 2 this year, Liam Lawson. I mean, we are kind of stretching the definition of a rookie with him. He has the vibe of a rookie, even though his debut was, well, we're coming up on 2 years since his debut in Formula One. Let's just count it for the moment. So he's finally recovering psychologically from one of the biggest flops we've ever seen in Formula One. It was just kind of sad. Over the winter, there was so much hype, and he was doing all the media stuff and blah, blah, blah. And then it's like he quickly becomes the worst driver Red Bull have ever seen in their 20-year history. Now he's getting into a rhythm, and he started scoring points when he's returning with Raging Bulls, which is fine, but it's not. He has no future with Red Bull, so if he wants to stick around, he needs to find another team to join.
I think you said correctly. I think he's recovered psychologically. I think he's shown that in the past few races. But I remember at the end of 2024 and at the start of 2025, how some people were unhappy that Yuki should have deserved the seat and that Yuki performed a lot better than Lawson. I think it also came down to Liam's cockiness because he felt that, oh, I'm gonna be close to Max. Oh, I'm gonna do well in the Red Bull. Season opener, he gets a reality check and he's extremely off the pace. So I think the haters, if you would like to call them, won. And I think the way the situation was handled was poor, but I think in Red Bull's minds, I think they felt that there was no point continuing supporting Lawson if he's just gonna underperform, and I think that has been their ethos for the past few years. I think it's a bit toxic, but unless you're a Sebastian Vettel or a Max Verstappen, you're never gonna perform as well as Max. So I think how they handled the situation was a bit poor, but I think they wanted. I think as some people said, based on what I've read, I think they wanted to ensure that the Japanese market is satisfied. So I think he's recovering, but it's just sad to see how he is from this uplifting, energetic guy from 2023, not so much in 2024 to a what if. So I think he's rebuilding himself. I'm repeating myself, I know, but I'm trying to get my point across is that it's a bit too little too late, and I think he needs to move on because I don't think anyone would want him as of right now. Maybe that could change, but as of right now, I think his time in Formula One is coming to an end, and he needs to look at other options such as WEC, IndyCar, Super GT, and so on and so forth.
When I think of Lawson, I always remember the 2021 season where he was absolutely screwed over by the German manufacturers in DTM.
Yeah, the season
Other
finale.
than that, I think, yes, you both remember, right?
Yes, yeah.
I've watched Josh's video about it. I'll have to look at it again to see why it was a bit of a shambles.
But Kelvin or Sheldon, one of those two brothers, wasn't it? Crashed into him. One of the Van der Linders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, aside from this very unfortunate event, but it just seems like Lawson's career continues on the same trajectory. You know, he finally gets the breakthrough in 2023 to debut in Formula One and gets half a year and sidelined for Ricciardo. Then next year they don't like Ricciardo anymore, and so they get him back. And then finally, when it gets better, they give him the Red Bull seat. Complete ruin. You know, he was absolutely nowhere, and he was absolutely nowhere for half of the year, even after he went back to Racing Bulls. And now his marker is another rookie in Hadjar. And you know, at the end of the discussion, it doesn't matter if he continues to beat Isaac until the end of the year. Isaac is gonna get the preferential treatment over Liam because Liam was put in the Red Bull car and they got disappointed, and nobody ever went back to the Red Bull car. You know, not Kvyat, not Gasly, not Albon, and they were perfectly good drivers, Gasly, Kvyat, Albon, but you know, after they got sidelined by the Red Bull, they never got back into a top team. You know, and Liam now is basically guaranteed to never have a chance at something real in Formula One.
In Gasly's case, I think he had a more immature teammate at the time, and the fact that Perez was bringing in a lot of sponsors to Red Bull. So even if he did want to go back to Red Bull, I think the chances were nil, as you said. But also the fact that Perez was bringing in a lot of money, and that Red Bull needed the monies, to put it in simple words. So I think it's a shame for Lawson, but I wish him the best wherever he goes to next.
It's there's a lot of things that go into his performance at Red Bull. I mean, there is, well, we know, the car being built around Max and the team being built around Max being a generational talent. The lack of testing is a huge factor, but also the other thing is we get so many complaints in the past couple of years about drivers saying, "Oh, the car doesn't suit my driving style." It's like, okay, well, the very best drivers can adapt to whatever car and make it work, but I think it's exaggerating the problem because the field spread is so small. Because Tsunoda in the recent races has been maybe 3/10 behind Max in qualifying, and that's the difference between going out in Q1 and Q2. Lawson was about a second, which today is huge. 20 or 30 years ago, that would be the difference between qualifying 6th and 10th or something. Is that it's because you can't get away with making those errors because it just creates such an enormous gap in the grid, and then you get stuck because the cars can't overtake, and so you just can't make any progress or whatever. It's just fascinating the way nothing worked with him at all, to do even worse than everyone else, because the ego thing as well is interesting. I mean, all the drivers are egotistical. You have to be a racing driver and get to that level. But I suppose also with him is that he's very determined because he came from a fairly modest background and had a lot of financial problems because New Zealand is so isolated. To get here, it definitely knocked him down a peg or two and humbled him with how all of that went, and now he's recovered from it. But there is also the thing in the back of my head that it's very much a we have Yuri Vips at home kind of deal with him, that he's only there because we can't have Yuri Vips at the end of the day.
We don't talk about Yuri Vips.
Yeah, you say that this is an excuse, the fact that the drivers don't like the car, but let's look objectively at Red Bull, at the situation there, with Perez, with Lawson, with Tsunoda. Okay, we saw Verstappen being able at times to put insane gaps on Perez, even more insane gaps on Lawson, and now still pretty much insane gaps on Tsunoda, pretty much every weekend, in and out. And then you have those occasional weekends when that doesn't happen. Baku 2024, Bahrain this year, again Hungary this year, the first 6 races of 2023 with Perez, and then the first 5 races of 2024 with Perez. In those races, he didn't have half a second on Perez. In Bahrain, he didn't have half a second on Tsunoda. And he didn't have half a second on Tsunoda also in Hungary. And what does that say? It says, in my opinion, that when Verstappen also doesn't like the car, as was the case in Baku last year, as was the case in Bahrain and Hungary this year, he doesn't put half a second on Tsunoda and Perez. He puts a few tenths at most. That's the realistic gap between them. At the beginning of 2024 and 2023, he puts a few tenths on Perez. Why? Because also Perez was liking the car in those races, and so that was the realistic gap. What we have been seeing in the past 2 years, most of the time, is a driver who likes the car and another driver who doesn't like the car, and the gap is insane. Yes, that's precisely the point. When Verstappen doesn't like the car, he doesn't put half a second on those drivers. He puts the more realistic gaps that actually exist between them. Max Verstappen also at times struggle with the car. So if Max Verstappen struggle, what does that say about everyone else who claims they have been struggling with the cars? I think it is a very reasonable claim. I think these ground effect cars are so stupid in their conception, in the way they behave, that they create these scenarios that years prior would have been unrealistic and not easily excusable. Right now, I actually do trust these excuses. I trust that Joe wasn't 1.5 seconds slower than Bottas last year, because that wasn't the realistic gap they had in 2023 and 2022, and it was down to the car. And as it was proven in the last 3 races, when the car was fixed, the Sauber, Joe was no longer 1.5 seconds behind Bottas. He instead was also beating Bottas at times, in those 3 races. I do believe that with these ground effect cars, a driver liking and not liking the cars makes a huge difference. And that drivers have very little they can do to solve this.
I mean, a critical point as well is that even when Max is struggling and having those off weekends, he's still faster than them, even if it's not by as much. That's the thing. The only time that hasn't happened, well, last year, Monza, Checo was close to him. Baku, he was faster, but then binned it at the end, so it doesn't count. But Max is still faster, and with the ground effect as well. This is the whole thing of excessive regulation, that you're putting the cars into a box where they're so similar that you can't. If it's not a car you like, you're stuck because every car drives that way. But also, it's not even using proper ground effect because they don't have the skirts and everything else. It's all very top end aero. And maybe get rid of that, and you'll get more variety in design, and you'll get drivers like, oh, actually, this works really nicely, rather than, oh, well, if I don't like ground effect, I'm stuck because everyone has it. Right.
Based on what I've just heard, I think it just suggests that Max is a different beast. I'm not sure if Ashiel mentioned this as well, but I think if the second driver likes the car and Max doesn't, then it suggests that Max is built entirely and that he likes a different kind of oversteer. And I think this is why we saw results. We saw races like Baku last year and Bahrain this year, where Checo and Yuki respectively was ahead of Max. So I think it also goes down in how much a driver likes the setup and what their limit is. So you could also say that.
Yeah, it's that. It's also just team dynamics because Max, like all the kind of GOAT candidates, if you will, he's going to be he's a very uncompromising driver that wants the team built around him and favoring him, and that's going to play into it as well. There's a lot that goes in. It's just it was fascinating with Liam because of how especially bad it was. But since then, yeah, now he's getting on with the job. But it's just by his standards, what he's doing is good. By any other standard, it's just kind of satisfactory that he's getting points sometimes. But he's not going to go to Red Bull, so he'll need to in the future if he wants to stick around, he'll need to think of another team to join. I think. After him in the standings, someone who's moved up quite a bit recently is Gabriel Bortoleto. So incumbent Formula 2 champion, someone who, very, very consistent in F3 and F2. Started the season quietly because Sauber just weren't anywhere, and we thought, well, this is going to be a really depressing season. But then they brought some upgrades. Now the car is a midfielder. He's making Q3. He's annihilating Hulkenberg in qualifying, even though Hulkenberg got his first podium. And the points are coming, and he's beginning to get some attention and look reasonably promising.
I would like to bring up Ashiel's point about Joe, and I think we're seeing the same thing with Bortoleto as well. If the car is good, then the driver becomes good. If the car is not good, then obviously we're going to see some underperformance. But I think as soon as the upgrades came along, I think Bortoleto began to show his true potential. For example, he's a good qualifier, so he's able to put the Sauber in places where he should not be, such as in Hungary just a few weeks ago. And I think he has now shown a little bit of promise. But if he wants to be my overall rookie of the year, he needs to continue providing the good performance and showing what he's capable of, and ensure that he's not just making sure that he's just doing a good job. So right now he's close, but he needs to do a lot more.
I don't actually agree with your point about the car being bad and the drivers being worse than they actually can be. But it's such a weird point to address because, when the car is bad, what is bad about it, it clearly is going to affect the driver's performance. So what effect the car being bad is exclusively the fault of the car, at what extent can we fault the driver for it? So weird discussion. But
I just wanted to bring this up because in the first couple of races, Bortoleto was just not in the points. So also I was just thinking about your point on Giselle, so that's why I thought it would be a good comparison. But if it's something else
But
entirely,
neither,
then I can see why.
but neither was Nico in the points, aside from Australia,
Mm.
which was a mess of a race. So Bortoleto retired in Australia because the suspension broke on his car. So maybe he could have scored on the same strategy as Hülkenberg. But, aside from that, the Sauber weren't good enough to score. But, throughout that season, throughout the start of this year, before the upgrade in Spain, Bortoleto was already beating Hülkenberg at times. First race of the year, Bortoleto qualified ahead of Nico. It happened again. I don't remember which race. Oh god, I saw them before. It was either Monaco or Imola where Bortoleto qualified ahead of Nico again. And there was still another time where Bortoleto beat Nico in qualifying. And then in the races, China, Bortoleto spun in the gravel on the first time. Still finish ahead of Nico because the car was so shit in China, guys. It was so bad in China that Nico gave up, okay? He couldn't keep the car on the road, so stopped pushing. Bortoleto also couldn't keep the car on the road, but being a rookie, tried to push, so he still could have like 1 minute on Hülkenberg that race. So China is kind of an exception. But what I'm trying to say is even when the car was bad, Bortoleto was already performing well against Hülkenberg. And the shortcomings were what you expect from a rookie. Inexperience, kind of having the race pace and also good tire degradation, making the overtakes when needed and not lose time behind cars lower than you. All those things as a rookie kind of compromise your weekend. And what happened at Sauber is when the car became good and could score points, now people were actually caring about Cyber and they were seeing the difference between Hülkenberg and Bortoleto. And so they were also seeing when Bortoleto was doing good. And they weren't doing that at the start of the season because they don't care about the backmarker team. Nobody cares. Nobody follows them. And so you just don't follow what actually happens. Bortoleto was fast right away this year. What has been improving is how he executes the race, how he makes the overtakes. We remember in Spain, he was stuck behind Lawson, and instead Hülkenberg, yes, it was Lawson, and instead Hülkenberg finished about 5th place, but he had a qualified Hülkenberg in qualifying in Spain. That's the fun part. What helped Hülkenberg was that out of Q1, he had all the new set of soft tires he could have dreamed of. So at the start, made up a lot of places. At the restart, made up a lot of places. He even overtook Hamilton. And instead, Bortoleto didn't have that kind of advantage and then got stuck behind slower cars. And so that made a huge difference in that race, although Bortoleto was already as fast as Hülkenberg, in my opinion. And now we have seen in Austria still kind of the same thing. He on a two-stopper. At the end of the race, he had to make some overtakes. He had one shot with Alonso and couldn't make it. And then Alonso outwitted him with the leaders being back markers and leaving places. So Bortoleto literally got one shot when he should have gotten 3 shots at overtaking Alonso. But then now we see in Hungary and also in Belgium, normal races, he qualified well, got the good strategies, he finished 9th and 6th place. No, the perfect result for Sauber. And instead Hülkenberg wasn't there. You see the improvement in how well Bortoleto was able to execute the races. But on pace, he was already there with Nico since the start of the year. And I don't know really what to make of it. Kind of the same discussion then goes for Ocon and Bearman, but that is for later. But I don't like that there's lots of people that just didn't care about the first half of the year at Sauber, and so just say, he was nowhere, but now he's improving. No, that's not it. That's not the story. Bortoleto started the year very well, and just nobody cared because he wasn't fighting for points. Now that he's fighting for points, he's getting a fair assessment of how good he is.
He also qualified ahead of Nico at Imola this year. Just wanted to point that out. And now that you mention it, I think I now remember that the Bortoleto is a lot better than I thought. I just been overlooking him because I just don't pay too much attention on slower cars. But now that you mention, I think he has improved, shown his qualifying skills. I think my expectations for him were a bit too high because I was thinking about points and all that. So, but that doesn't change the fact that he has been very good. I think he's doing what he needs to do. I think he's showing some promise, and he needs to continue doing that. So I'll be keeping a close eye on him as well.
I mean, I had basically no expectations for him when he started the season because it was going to be with Sauber. As like we've seen how they've been the past couple of seasons, they're just not going to. They'll have one or two good races and otherwise just be very anonymous. So it wasn't bothering me at all because I thought, well, he's being slow, yes, but then so is Hulkenberg. So because the car is bad, and it's not like there's a bit of a gap which you would expect because he's a rookie and Hulkenberg's very experienced, but otherwise they're not. There's nothing particularly bad going on here. I mean, in Jeddah he did almost kill Fernando, but didn't, so that's fine. Would have been good for the gossip and drama if he had. Otherwise, driving's been pretty solid, and yeah, now that the car can score points, he himself is scoring points, which is good. So he's just very, very safe. And I guess when we get to Sao Paulo, I think we'll be able to gauge at that point how much what the hype is like and the attention. Because otherwise, because I think at first a lot of Brazilians were just like, who? But now that he's driving reasonably well, I think they're starting to get more interested in him. Yeah. So next up, Nedzo isn't here to defend his honor, but we have Ollie Bearman. Kind of a funny season from him because a lot of even without that race in Ferrari and the two races he did last year, he probably would have got the seat this year anyway with Haas. Oh, goodness me. 4 consecutive 11th places. He hasn't scored any points outside of a sprint since Bahrain, which isn't brilliant. Qualifying has been pretty bad. He has one of the worst qualifying averages, a lot of Q1 eliminations, things kind of all over the place. I don't remember him crashing at all this year, to be honest, or any really significant errors. I think
The
it's just
Silverstone crash in free practice. Then there was the red flag infringement at Monaco, but that's a close call.
That's the thing. Okay, so obviously
there was the crash in Australia, free practice.
Okay.
And yeah, I don't remember other incidents or stuff like that from Bearman.
Relatively minor. I mean, as we saw from Sao Paulo last year, he's not the world's best wet weather driver, but again, that's probably a lack of testing thing. But also, the main recurring theme with him seems to be that the race control or the stewards have just declared war on him and are just looking for any excuse to give him grid penalties. Because you look at all of them and you're like, no, that really is marginal. And again, it's like giving a 10 place grid penalty because you didn't slow down enough for a red flag. It's like, well, you weren't anywhere near the source of the red flag. You didn't put anyone at danger. You didn't gain any performance advantage. So why? What's the point of giving a penalty like that? Just give them a fine or a slap on the wrist or whatever. So that has not helped. That's meant he's basically been always starting at the back of the grid. Against Ocon has outperformed him. Again, he's the experienced one. He's the race winner. But otherwise, just okay, I guess, but not setting the world alight. The other British drivers, obviously, they carry more reputation of definitely outshining him.
I thought it was Ocon who had terrible qualifying pace.
Well, I think both of them do. I mean, they're Ocon. I think Ocon's is worse, actually. Like his gap to pole, but Bearman is ending up at the back all the time because he keeps getting penalised.
Believe it or not, he is one of the drivers that I paid least attention to. Not because because as you said, if it weren't for Nedzo, I think I would have voted him, but. I think he's showing more or less some promise. I don't think he's showing a lot of it just yet. I think I would give him some more time. I think and 2024, I think he finished way below Charles, which so I keep forgetting. I keep losing words. But anyway, my expectations for him were also a bit low. I was hoping that he would do well in the Haas because of last year, especially in Baku. Sao Paulo, I think that was an outlier because I agreed he wasn't a good wet weather driver. And I think it was evident in Silverstone, correct? Yeah, I think So, but Bearman, I think, as for the accusations, my vocab and grammar are excellent. The accusations that the stewards are finding ways to sabotage him, and like you said, it's a bit marginal. But at the same time, I think it's more down to inexperience and just him making some marginal mistakes. but I don't think I would go as far as Bearman is being disadvantaged. Oh, the Jews don't want him. I think it's a bit marginal. I think it's a bit close, but it's also down to some of the marginal mistakes. So Bearman is doing okay for the most part. Just looking at his point, I think he hasn't scored points since Bahrain, and he hasn't scored some sprint points since Belgium. So he's doing. Like I said, he's doing okay. But if Ferrari want to consider him in the future, I think he would have to do a lot more.
I think, as I said before, there is a similar comparison I made for Rome between Bortoleto and Hülkenberg. I think the same can apply to Ocon and Bearman, although with the differences given the car. As in, Haas is quite a bad car in qualifying, but then on race pace it's actually very good. So what happens at Haas?
Yeah, I was also taking the points and the non-scoring finishes into account as well. So I was just looking at the points now. So, like I said, he's doing okay, whether he's finishing in the points or not. But he's just doing a lot more. Carry on.
What happened at Haas is that you have the team that has to make up positions in the race. You know, they have the car to make up positions in the race, but if they get stuck in traffic, then they don't have enough laps to get into the points by the end of the race. So what happens is that they have to go on alternate strategies, weird stuff, to try to get the clear air and overtake the cars, not on track, but on better pace on alternate strategies. And so what they've been doing is that they get two strategies. They think both are valid strategies, but they don't know which one gets more traffic. So they give one strategy to one of their driver and the other strategy to the other driver. And so Colin and Bearman are never on the same strategy. Both are on potentially rewarding strategies. But, you know, at the end of the day, they both start behind, so they have to execute. You know, the alternate strategies, you have to make the overtakes of the slower cars. You have to manage well your tires throughout the stints. You have to put everything together. And as I said, this is the key difference between the experienced drivers and the rookie teammates. Ocon has been able to pull off the one stoppers, the two stoppers, because he has been able to manage the race appropriately and make the crucial overtakes. Instead, Bearman sometimes got stuck behind the slower cars and so couldn't get out in free air and make the overtakes and have the pace to get back into the points. And so that made for a huge difference between Bearman and Ocon, you know, irrespective of the strategies they had, simply because Bearman is more inexperienced and he's starting behind due to the cars, and honestly, also due to the penalties he's been getting. That's kind of insane how many penalties he's been getting this year. But you know, all that together meant he always had to make up through execution. And being a rookie, doesn't have as good an execution as Ocon, and so it doesn't look good. But you know, on pace, he's been there with Ocon. Ocon is a bit of a weird case to assess because half of the time he's actually on pace and half of the time he's slower than he could be. And you never understand which is which, especially when he's up against a rookie. And so, you know, properly assessing how good Bearman has been is kind of hard. You know, he's in a car that's not as rewarding as a Sauber, a Racing Bull, or a Mercedes would be. So he looks worse than Lawson, than Bortoleto, even than Antonelli. But I don't think Bearman has been bad at all this year. I think he's showing everything he has showed in those three outings last year.
So they're using different strategies to see which one's the most effective. So, or what exactly are they trying to achieve?
Okay, so to explain myself better, take Hungary. You know, optimally, the best strategy in Hungary was a two-stopper. It's the faster strategy. But you know, you have to be in free air. You have to be in free air. Otherwise, if you are behind a slower car, you don't get the reward of being on a two-stopper. And so you got Norris doing the big brain move on a one-stopper, and you know, Piastri lost enough time behind Leclerc, and then Norris is actually quite fast. And so only caught him at the end, couldn't make the overtake, and that was it. Norris won on a one-stopper, although the two-stopper was better. And this is the case basically the entire year, because that's how Pirelli is trying to manage the races. Pirelli is trying to bring the tires in such a way that one stopping or two stopping is almost equivalent. So you get cases like Hungary, as I just described. You get cases like Canada, where if anybody followed the midfield fight in Canada, the big brain move was to stop once, because everyone who was stopping was getting stuck in traffic. The exception to that was Alonso, because Alonso, even in traffic, was able to make the overtakes. And so Alonso in a two-stopper still finished ahead of all the one-stopper. He had to overtake a bunch of guys twice. But, Alonso could make the overtakes. So for Alonso, the two-stopper worked. For others who got stuck in traffic, in Canada, remember Colapinto? He was stuck, couldn't make the overtake, and so on a two-stopper, he utterly failed. He went out of the points. That's the difference I'm trying to point out. If you can make the overtakes, if you can lose as little time as possible, a two-stopper is usually faster. But you have to be able to pull it off. Otherwise, you're gonna go back on a one-stopper and try to pull the one-stopper off. In the one-stopper, you have to be able to make the guys on the two-stopper lose as much time as possible. Otherwise, you're not gonna hold position against the guys on the faster strategy. And so, for many races this year, this has been the game. You have to be able to defend, but also to make the overtakes. You have to be able to be on the pace. You have to be fast on either strategy. And for the rookie drivers, this is the issue. We saw it with Bortoleto in Spain. He should have overtaken Lawson, couldn't, and so didn't even finish in the points. We saw it again with Bortoleto in Austria. It was on a two-stopper, should have finished ahead of Lawson and Alonso, couldn't, and so didn't finish ahead of them. We see it at the end of the field with Norris and Piastri in Hungary, but there are many other occasions of similar instances all throughout the year. And so I think that's what I'm trying to say about Bearman. At Haas, they're smart. They know either strategy can work. You only have to pull it off. And so they put both drivers on the strategy and see which one can pull it off. And Ocon, being more experienced, is able to pull the strategy off more than Bearman.
Okay, I see. So I think that. Okay, so I can see why you think Bearman hasn't done a great job. Which, to be fair, I think, which is why I haven't really paid too much to him. But as I said earlier, he needs to do a lot more, and he will do over time. But right now, I just want to see some improvements later on this year or for 2026. So let's see how that pans out.
If I was a team principal, I'd be a split strategy Nazi. I like having your bases covered, and we've seen that because most of the time the McLarens run the same strategy, one person's going to get screwed because whoever gets priority on pitting gets the undercut, or you double stack and lose time or whatever. Yeah, I think they're more fun. But with Bearman, there's been a lot of hype, and to be honest, it's probably just a classic case of British bias. Because I get that in F2 we saw he did the double at Baku and stuff like that, which is fine, and there's been reasonable promise. It's just now it's not bad, it's not good, it's just fine. I mean, even when I went to Silverstone a month ago, he was getting, well, not really any kind of reception compared to Lando, George and Lewis. I mean, even George wasn't getting much of one. So people just don't, for the time being, they just don't really care or don't notice much. And yeah, we'll see. He'll probably do a few years in Haas and maybe he'll move somewhere else. I don't know, but he's doing his thing. So then next up, goodness me, Franco Colapinto. I think he's benefiting at the moment from having the psychotic fan base buff, which is helping to keep him on the grid and for him to not get screwed over too much. But this has been very disappointing compared to Williams last year. All he had to do was be better than Sargent, which is fairly straightforward, and that was enough to scare Albon, who was used to not having any competition for 3 years or whatever. And now it's he's just. I mean, he even a few days ago he crashed in a Pirelli tyre test at Imola. There's been a few other shunts, and all the other races, he's just running around at the back, being completely invisible. And it's not, it's really not proportionate to the insane hype that he has in Latin America and this just complete obsession that they have with him. And it's like, he might look like him, but he's not Senna.
He's being the worst rookie of the grid in this half of the year. You know, and it's, the fun thing is that it's. Do you remember all the bad things I said about the drivers prior, about Antonelli, about Hadjar, about Bortoleto, about Bearman? You know, their shortcomings. You know, they've been unlucky, they've made mistakes, they've been inexperienced. Colapinto is all three. You know, he's inexperienced. He's off the pace of Gasly in a similar way as to what is happening at Red Bull. Then he makes mistakes, and then he's also unlucky. You know, he got a slow pit stop in Hungary. He's being inexperienced, so the few times he's actually was on the pace faster than Gasly fighting for the points, he wasn't in a condition to score the points. In Canada, he got stuck in traffic, so didn't make the strategy work out. So he's inexperienced, he's unlucky, he's making mistakes, all the crashes. When in qualifying in Spain, and then the pit stop at the start of the race at Silverstone, he had to retire for a clutch problem. As it turned out, it's because he wasn't doing the proper procedure and was breaking the clutch. That's the rumors that goes. So, you know, he's making mistakes, he's inexperienced, he's unlucky. You're the worst driver on the grid, the worst rookie. You know, not all is your fault, but a good deal also is your fault. So it's kind of a funny situation there for Colapinto, because it's looking very, very tough to see him again next year.
Yeah, experience is definitely a contributing factor because I think as soon as he joined Williams later on, it got over. It got over to him. I could think it went over his head. I don't know how to say it. I think he just showed a little bit of immaturity and he was a bit too overconfident. But I also think it's also down to the environment. I'm not sure what's going on behind the scenes with Briatore, but that 5 race stint has become a lot more than just 5 races. So, and he was one of the drivers that I looked at in the second half of 2024 after they dropped Logan Sargent, and it wasn't until Baku when I saw the potential, and I was thinking, oh, Colapinto is going to do great. He's going to have a lot of potential. He's beating Albon. When will we have a Sainz Colapinto lineup? And then that Sainz Colapinto lineup never happened. And then he started to crash, whether it's during the races or during qualifying last year. And this year, I'm not sure if it's down to him being unlucky or it's just the environment putting a lot of pressure on him. So he's definitely a disappointment. I think it's such a shame for him because I think he should have calmed down, but I think it's also about whether he can adapt to the toxic environment or not. So I think what he could have done was stay at Williams and learn and grow as a driver, and maybe that could have worked, maybe not. But going to Alpine was probably a bit of a risk because I don't know. It's just that you have to adapt to a new environment, new team, new car, and I think he also did show a bit of immaturity. So, Colapinto has been a disappointing driver, but I think would I say he's an improvement over Doohan? That's up to you to decide. But other than that, I really don't have anything to say about Colapinto. The party's over. The fiesta's over.
Yeah, Colapinto, he's a driver who probably doesn't have the mental strength to deal with someone like Flav. That's not what he was hoping for, maybe going into that team. But also, he's there because I've forgotten who his sponsors are. They were talking about that they signed up before the season began. And so he's basically
a delivery company, is it?
Yeah, I've forgotten the name now, but he's basically a pay driver now. It's because the first few races with Williams were great because he was scoring points and scaring Albon off the road or whatever, and then he started crashing. But it's like, okay, well, everyone crashed in that car. That's one thing about Williams this year. The drivers don't crash anymore, so that's a start. But but then he started crashing, and now he's been worse than Doohan, I would say. His best result so far is 13th. It's not good with the amount of hype around him, and it's like, what are you gaining from this? Because there are some races we see, I mean, like Hungary, for example, where Gasly doesn't do particularly well either, but that's just because the car is bad, because Gasly has been absolutely supreme since like 2021, and the team is collapsing and it's fucked, and I have no idea what they're going to call themselves next year when they take on Mercedes engines, or who's going to buy them. I don't know. It's a mess.
It's Mercado Libre.
That's the one. That's the sponsors.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll become. Yeah.
Overall, Alpine's a mess. I don't even know if they're even a Formula team at this point.
Yeah, the thing is, this is a team which its legacy goes all the way back to Tolman. They have the history and they have the success. Ironically enough, with Briatore, but at the moment they are just they've been an operational mess for about 4 or 5 years now, and it's just not. It's no use being there. And so
there's a reason why Alonso left Alpine at the end of the 2022 season,
and Piastri as well. Yeah, definitely. And Ocon. Well, actually, he was kicked out, but that just shows the problems even more. So the other driver, even though he's no longer on the grid, I think we should cover Doohan. Part of me is hoping he might come back, although it seems unlikely, even though Colapinto has not exactly blown him out of the water. I wanted him to succeed, and I wanted it to do well, because his junior career was just okay, but the one thing he did show is that he's very disciplined, industrious, hard worker. We saw the amount of, he was hopping on the simulator all the time. Even now, he's still doing loads of simulator work for Alpine. And then it's like, you've got this full-time contract, and then it's like, no, you're on a 5 races, and then we'll decide. It's like, great, well, that's one way to put pressure on me. And then also the car's crap. It's like, well, it's no wonder he didn't do so well with it. Maybe they'll bring him back, but otherwise, I wouldn't want, to be honest, I would feel so betrayed. I wouldn't want anything to do with them at this point.
What I really find funny about this situation is how much Alpine were pushing for him, especially at the start of 2024, and when they announced that Ocon would be leaving the team at the end of the 2024 season. And then afterwards, they just go for whoever has the bigger wallet. So I don't think anyone rated Doohan as much. I don't know about you, but I don't think he has been the most exceptional driver. I think he has been more or less anonymous in my eyes, because I admit I haven't paid too much attention. I haven't paid much attention to him, but I don't think there's much to say about Jack Doohan, because it's just a sad situation to be in. But I don't think he wasn't the best driver, and because of the Argentine fan base, I think the situation was a lot worse than him. Because what about that fake post earlier this year that Doohan had to call out?
Oh, it was at Imola, wasn't it? I've forgotten. It was because Colapinto crashed. I've forgotten what it was exactly. Yeah. I think he had to say it wasn't real. I think it wasn't him slagging off Colapinto.
It was a fake post of Mick Doohan slagging off Colapinto when he crashed during qualifying.
Yes. It was his mum or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's such an unfortunate to be in that situation. I don't think he deserved to be in the first place. So
yeah, I think Ollie Oakes was probably his only main ally, and then when he was gone, it was like, well, there's no one on your side anymore, so the flat's just going to get rid of you.
Unfortunately, it is what it is, especially with the South American fan base, and they would definitely go for anyone who has more promise than you. And if you even try to make a mistake, like, they will call you asshole. Jack Doohan hasn't been the greatest driver on the grid. Unfortunate situation. I have nothing more to say about that. And unless any of you has anything to say about Doohan, then we can move on.
Okay. Another driver maybe we should touch on quickly, who's been doing a lot of FP1 sessions, is Paul Aron, and this links to Alpine because he's one of their academy drivers or test drivers or whatever. He again has a lot of hype. He did very well in Formula 2 last year. He's been doing FP1 sessions with Sauber, which rather than Alpine themselves, which is they've just loaned him over there, which is a bit random. I don't think there's any chances of him driving for them, especially they've got their 2 drivers locked in for when they become Audi. But as it is, maybe it's not entirely implausible that they might draft him in to Alpine if Colapinto just gets worse and worse, and maybe that's the logic in having him drive for Sauber without getting in the way of testing time for the other two. But yeah, there's the potential to get him on and have Estonia added to the list of countries to produce a Formula One driver. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I have nothing to say about Paul Aron. I don't.
He's the
Really?
only
He's the only.
only what? I mean, he's
Yeah.
the only driver who, of the reserves and the test drivers, there's no one else that seems like we would see this season they might make the step up. Because I mean, Arvid Lindblad, next year it's probably going to be in one of the Racing Bull seats. The other reserves are just random washed middle-aged guys from 10 years ago, or I don't know. But yeah, Paul Aron it's a possibility, but probably we'll see. Maybe that'll happen in the second half of the season. So maybe to conclude, just for fun, we could grade each of the rookies on their season as it's gone so far. So if we start with Antonelli, I think it's been mostly good. I'm inclined to go for something like an A-. I think.
I'm not used to the grading system with the letters. I'm more used to the grading system with the numbers from 0
Okay,
to
so
10.
you go from A to F, and you can have a plus or minus on each letter as well.
Okay.
So this is how we do it in the UK
an A
and in
plus
America.
would be an A plus would be basically Max Verstappen level.
And A plus or A star is the highest, and then an F is the lowest. F for fail, basically. Yeah.
Okay, I'd say that Bortoleto and Hadjar are both Bs. Antonelli is a C plus, as is also Bearman, a C plus. Then Lawson is the a sufficient mark, or is it a insufficient?
What do you mean?
What is a passing grade in school? What is the minimum grade you?
I think it's an E, like an F for fail. I think an E upwards is a pass.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then Lawson is a D plus.
Yeah.
Check Doohan an F plus and Colapinto an F.
Okay, as for my list, it's actually not very difficult than I thought. I'm gonna start with Hadjar first. So it's a bit similar to yours, A Shield, a B. So is Bortoleto, so it's a bit similar. But I'm not sure if I'm gonna give Antonelli a B plus, just because of the misfortunes and whatever else he had later on. So he's doing okay. What else do we have? Bearman, a C. Lawson, C as well. Doohan, I would say an F, and Colapinto an F as well. Am I missing a driver there?
I don't think so. No.
Okay, so that's pretty much my ranking.
Okay, so I said Antonelli. I've been a bit generous. A-. Who is it? Yeah. Hadjar's been good for the most part, but he can have a B. Lawson is going to be like an E. Bortoleto can get. I'll be nice to Bortoleto. He can have an A. Bearman's going to be a C. Colapinto can be an F, and Doohan an E. I'll just get him into a passing grade, I think.
Actually, I'm actually going to change for Lawson. I'm actually going to place him D, just because of what he faced earlier this season and what he faced so far.
Yeah. It's taken him a while to recover. But yeah, so it's an interesting to have this many rookies on the grid in one season is quite rare. Interesting mix. If we carry on as the season goes on, I think there's more to come from most of them. There's a few, Colapinto and that. I don't think it's going to get any better, but yeah, with the rest, there's still plenty of potential. Good. You've been listening to the DRS Train podcast. We're on YouTube and Spotify, and you can find us on Instagram and X at the DRS Train podcast. If you become a channel member, you get early access to videos as well as some behind-the-scenes stuff, and you can join one of our guests today, Blue Guy, as well as Birk Toshkun and Chris O'Dea as a channel member. Make sure to tune in for our next episode. Stay safe, and we'll see you all next time.